Hey everyone, welcome back to Theonopolis, where today we are going to build some more working / middle and lower class buildings and homes. And this is going to take quite some time, or at least I'm going to make a start in this video, but building all these buildings is going to take a very long time because these buildings are supposed to take up the majority of like the back area of Theonopolis. So I'm not sure if I'm going to record all of the buildings because again, that's going to take a long time, but well, I could do that, but then probably Theonopolis would take another half a year because, well, as I said before, this is going to take the majority of the space in Theonopolis, so I'm probably going to do some buildings off screen, and if I have like an interesting building or do something new, then I'm probably going to make a video out of it. But sadly, well, I'm already starting with bad news, but as you can see or have seen, I forgot, well, I didn't forget, but I didn't record the first half of building the first home because I hit the recording button twice. So I thought I was recording and then I looked at, well, the recording thingy and I saw that it wasn't recording and that I had a video of 10 seconds. So the first half of building this building or this home sadly wasn't recorded, but I got the later half of it because luckily I did check. So anyway, the buildings are a little bit more universally usable, I would say, because even though these buildings are completely referenced off buildings in Assassin's Creed Odyssey and then in Athens, I also see them a little bit like being slightly medieval. Like I can see these buildings maybe like slightly before like Renaissance Italy, like those kinds of buildings with all the woodwork and the stucco, because that's one of the most significant things about these buildings. I can't use any marble because that's an expensive item. You're not going to really see that in, let's say, a working class home. I'm mostly stuck with wood, stucco, and surprisingly these tile roofs. I haven't used these roofs in the majority of buildings in Theonopolis. Most of the more wealthy homes don't actually have these roofs, because I stuck with flat roofs for quite a long time. So it was fun to actually use these roofs because I really like these roofs, because I think I've said this already once before, but I like the buildings that I built to have a little bit of like roughness to them and like that they look like they have been used. And these tile roofs actually really show that, because they are not completely pretty and all that and completely, well, how do I say that? Like in the best version of them, or I think you guys understand what I mean. Also, I'm quickly going to say this, I'm going to try and be a little bit more structural with the commentary, as I would say it. More so because the last speed build, I think, is a little bit of, yeah, a little bit of a mess. Because I basically jumped everywhere. I'm not going to say I'm not going to ramble, I'm just going to be a little bit more like actually talk about what's happening in the video, because otherwise I could basically just upload the rambling and then just have like a nice picture in the background. So anyway, as I said before, the buildings are going to be quite different to everything I've built in Theonopolis so far. However, later on there's one building that is slightly similar to a building I've built before and actually built in, I think, the 3rd episode of Theonopolis. Again, don't watch the first 10 episodes of Theonopolis because I wouldn't survive that, because they were so bad. But anyway, so the bigger building that I'm going to build later actually has kind of roots in a smaller building that I've built before, which actually was fun because I basically guessed how the building that I built earlier looked like or would have looked like, and then it's now I actually have a reference to actually base the building on, and they're similar. So I was thinking like, I guessed pretty good then, because I had no idea that the building would look like that in reality, at least. But yeah, so we finished the first home, and as I said before, I'm not going to use a lot of marble. Well, actually I'm not going to use any marble in these buildings. I am going to use a lot more, well, wood, but also the more rougher looking stone details to the buildings. Because, well, I want to use different materials. Because if you just use like stucco walls and wood throughout the entirety of what you're building, well, you can use those two in like one building, but then if the other building also has only those materials or only those colors or like something along that way, then it's going to be pretty boring, because then there's just no variety between buildings. And yes, to everyone who watched the Milestone Park, Milestone and Ozaru, for some reason now I can say variety without any issue. Yeah, that's the latest development on the front of Poisonblade can't talk for, well, actually, I think I am allowed to curse because, well, it hasn't stopped me ever before. But anyway, so as I said before, I want to use like different materials in between buildings, because then you get more variety between buildings, that they all get their like own little bit of like, how would I say it? Their own little bit of their own spirit, I would say, so that they don't look just like, well, duplicates of each other or duplicates. But yeah, so I used the same beams and such because I am going to use those throughout these buildings. Again, these buildings are going to take the majority of space in Theonopolis, so again, if you guys want to see it, I can do it, but I will probably stick to like the more exciting buildings, because yeah, this would otherwise take probably half a year longer. And I know that Theonopolis is like the biggest project on, well, my entire channel, but I can also see that, especially with Planet Zoo coming out, I would say, it's going to throw just a huge wrench. So I already know Theonopolis is going to take a lot longer than I originally thought it was going to be. And, well, I have a very short attention span. So I already know that like the first week of Planet Zoo, probably Theonopolis will be completely pushed to the background. And then afterwards we will see what will happen with like when Theonopolis is going to go on and when Planet Zoo is going to go on. But yeah, probably after Theonopolis I probably want to stick with Planet Zoo for a time. And yeah, Theonopolis has just been going on for so long by now. So I'm probably going to just record the more special buildings of this style and then go on to basically, well, I think the next video is probably going to include the kiddie coaster. And then, you know, finish off this area and then look at what special thing we can build after that. But back to what we're building, because I already said I wanted to talk a little bit more about what is actually happening in the video. But so I'm using a little bit of stone on the edges. Again, this building technique I have ripped straight out of Minecraft, which is kind of surprising. But in Minecraft, when you want to build something better looking, you usually have to make it like 2 layers, like 2 blocks. And I actually used that technique in Theonopolis and the Milestone Park and in Ozaru. Like everywhere you can see me build pillars on like the corners of buildings, so that the walls have a little bit more depth to them. So this is one time that Minecraft actually helped for that. Or actually helped me learn to build better in Planco and Planet Zoo. And I think, if I'm correct, Planet Zoo is 2.5 weeks from now, and I'm so excited on what to build, because the first thing I'm going to build is probably like a palace or something. Am I going to be completely narcissistic and build another palace of mine? Probably, or at least that will be the name of it in my mind, because I'm probably going to fill the palace with red pandas, because if you don't like red pandas, I'm officially scared of you. Anyway, back to the building. So I didn't build the backside of the building because you don't really see that, and otherwise I couldn't have put as much into this video as I would have wanted, because I basically am going to finish this corner, or at least this, well, there are going to be 3 buildings on this side and then another larger building on the other side, and then I'm going to really teeny tiny bitsy build the, how do you call it, the ride skin for the, well, I forgot the name of the ride, but it's that thing that if you color it right, it looks like a flower. That's literally how it's like written in my mind. That's like, alright, I have no idea how this ride is named, but it looks like a flower. So yeah, it's, I think, one of the more later rides that was added in one of the ride DLCs, but yeah, we're just gonna work with flower ride because I have no idea how it's named. Again, I'm really terrible with names. So yeah, it's going to be pretty funny in Planet Zoo, because in Planetcoaster, with most of the pieces that I use, I know the name. So if I can't bear to bring up the pages to actually search for them, I just will search their name. In Planet Zoo, I don't have that comfort, because I don't know how the pieces are named. So the first episode of Planet Zoo is probably going to be, well, I'm probably going to cut that out, but the first time building in Planet Zoo with all the pieces is probably going to be pretty hectic. But anyway, so with these buildings, because they are working class and middle and lower class buildings, there is the definite feel to make them like look run down. But I didn't want to do that because that would just be a little bit too easy. So I actually want to make them look, well, lived in, but not run down. So I don't want to make slums. Even though in the original draft of Theonopolis, I had originally planned to make an entire area just full of slums. But not now, or at least, well, maybe with the more darker coaster I'm maybe am able to make some slums, but probably not. But anyway, so because this is like the outskirts area, I also built like little gardens for the buildings, where the people or the inhabitants would probably have like a small little, let's say, vegetable garden, or just would have their own produce to, well, build. Yeah, I'm trying to make it a little bit more coherent, but sometimes my brain is just like, no, I'm not going to make you able to remember the words, even though they're pretty easy to remember. Cultivate is the word I was looking for. As I said, I sometimes have the mind of a goldfish or a squirrel. But anyway, this is the bigger building that actually was completely referenced of buildings in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, because right now that's like my main source of actual references, because these kinds of buildings don't usually survive. Like temples and such survive because they're usually built completely out of stone, or with marble, or just have like that impressive factor that other people beyond the time that the actual buildings were used want to preserve them. Like nobody would probably like think, oh, this warehouse is special in any way. Because yes, this is a warehouse, because I mean the, what is it, the boat ride actually comes through here, so there needs to be like a docking area, or at least I wanted to have a docking area. So I thought like, alright, let's try and build a warehouse. I've seen them in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and let's try and recreate them, because this is actually a little bit more recreating than actually building it completely myself. Well, I built it completely myself, but there is only a slight little bit of like, alright, I want to change this and this. So it was actually surprising because in, I think, the third episode of Theonopolis, I also built a warehouse, which is, I think, 1/3 the size of this warehouse. It's on the Acropolis. It's, I think, actually even the 4th building that I built, or maybe the 5th. Because I built 2 warehouses. One of them doesn't look anywhere like this, but the other one actually does look a little bit like this, only 3 times smaller than this. So yeah, also that warehouse has marble because it's right on top of the Acropolis. So yeah, the building is not, as I said, run down, because I don't like that. Because, I don't know, it's just, for me, a little bit of a cop-out to make like the poor areas of a city look completely run down. There will probably be like one street or so where I'm like, alright, let's make this into a slum, but I don't want the whole area to look completely run down. Because, I mean, the backstory with Theonopolis is that it's like a 1,000-year-old city, completely isolated from the rest of the world. And I wanted to, well, let's just keep it there. But I just didn't thought that it would be good storytelling wise to then also, like, if a city completely relies upon itself, is completely self-sustainable, then especially if you have like 1,000 or maybe even longer amount of time, you probably won't have slums. Or at least that's probably very idyllic, but I just didn't imagine Theonopolis as having like a large slum. Maybe with the Planetcoaster, but then that's not really a slum, it's more just that there is a plague. So then the place is going to look run down because people aren't living there anymore. Because that was the, I think, just a general idea for a long time. If there was like some kind of epidemic, just quarantine the zone and let everyone die within. And then later on move back in. I think that also basically made it so that if you didn't wait long enough, the epidemic would just resurge again, because the place would just have all the bacteria and everything that caused the disease. So if you move back in too soon, then yeah, let's just keep it there, because we started off talking about the warehouse and now I talk about epidemics. So yeah, the warehouse is actually huge, as you can see, and it's actually one wall probably too big for the space that I wanted it in, because, well, first off, it's not going to stay like this. It's just easier to build when the building is actually completely aligned with the map, so that every piece actually, without even like aligning it to the walls, actually is on like the same, what do you call it? Well, it's just in the same orientation as the rest of the building. So I'm going to move the warehouse later on, because now it's on, I think, 3 pods. So, but it's just easier to build this if you have like a building that you want to use a bit more frequently. Like, I want to actually use this warehouse maybe also in like the harbor area. So basically right now I'm building kind of like a blueprint of the building, and then later on I will place them in other places in Theonopolis, and then depending on the place I will do like add things, I will move things just to make it so that the building on the location that it's going to be at actually fits in with the rest of the area, but that you have like the same start point with the building. I really like the building, but again, it's huge. It is, however, completely referenced from a building in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, because I've recently just started watching videos of like people doing tours in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, mostly in Athens and, you know, not as rural areas. But here you can also see me quickly taking some market stalls from, well, actually the Agora, because I don't know why, like the same goes with bridges. When I get into it, I can build them quite fast, but I have like a high threshold to get into them. So when it comes to market stalls, I usually have like, again, the same with the warehouse. I have like a blueprint of market stalls, and then depending on the location I change them so that they fit. But yeah, there was just a little bit of space left on the side of the warehouse, and I didn't want to build like a building next to the warehouse. I thought that this warehouse is probably like government owned or something like that. So I just thought like, alright, I'm not going to build any additions to this place. And the ride is actually, well, it's themed surrounding like a village festival or something, probably in religious nature, because 2 episodes from now on we will probably be tackling the more, well, religious centers, aka the Theonopolian version of, let's say, Delphi. So I just thought like, alright, if there's some kind of like festival happening, there's probably also a lot of like market stalls and traders, because festivals just attract traders, because festivals draw people. I mean, that's still true nowadays. I mean, on every festival you will see a lot of like, well, shops and such just pop up because there are people there to sell it to. And if you are there as fast as you can, the people don't have any other place to buy the same product, so you can just basically milk them of all their money. Yeah. Anyway, so this is the more, I wouldn't say the more wealthy building, but it's certainly the more, well, stone building. Because, as I said before, I wanted to use different materials in between buildings so that they all have their like own little thing going on. And I didn't use any marble because, again, that's a very expensive product, or at least I envision it to be in Theonopolis. So most of it is just the rough bricks grid pieces, and then also just stucco or lime plastered walls, because, well, stucco is not the most expensive thing, and lime plaster also not the most expensive thing, probably. But I'm actually the most proud of this building. Well, if I had recorded the entirety of the first building, I could say that about that building, but you guys haven't seen the majority of that building. So from what you guys have seen, this building is probably the greatest in my mind. Because this building is actually later made up of 2 buildings, because right now all the buildings that I've built so far in this video are 1 building. They are just 1, well, grid, I would say. And this building is going to be made out of 2 buildings, because otherwise it would just be a block. And I don't like building blocks. Or at least it would just be a cube. Well, not a cube, it's more of a rectangle. But I think you guys know what I mean. And that's probably one of the greatest tips I can just give to you guys if you want to have like a very dynamic looking building. Don't make it out of 1 building, is basically what I'm saying. Make it into like, well, have it have extensions, have it have more than just 1 grid, I would say. So that there is just like a weird little elements to a building, because most of the time in older cities or older buildings, you can see that also being true, because then in older buildings, throughout the generations, things get added to it, things get removed from it, and eventually you just have like a very unique building that's just made by the people living in it. So I'm using the same building techniques that I've used in the first block, but then I just make it a little bit different. I make it a little bit higher. I change some small things because, again, it's a little bit higher, so it has, well, a second layer to detail. But when you look at it in 2 separate, as 2 separate buildings, it's a very weird looking building, or at least weird looking buildings. If you place them together, they look okay-ish. And when you detail them, they look even better, I would say. Also, I have found out, and this might be, well, me just not looking good enough, but if you rotate some of the pirate windows, they don't have any texture on the back of them, so then they're just open windows. And that's basically what I used. I think I found this out while building the Odeon Square, that some of these windows don't have texturized backgrounds, so they're just see-through. But then the edges of the roofs of the windows do have texture, so you just end up with an open window. And then if you like place some shutters inside, you have your own kind of window without much trouble. So I'm actually quite interested now in what pirate windows do have a texturized background or do have like an actual back, and which ones don't. Yeah, I was really happy when I found it out, because as you've seen beforehand, I just built the windows entirely on my own, like building them by using all these wooden beams and rotating them and such. So this made it a little bit easier, and it's also like the right size windows that would be in an ancient Grecian home. Not just working class, actually higher class also. Because, well, ancient Greece and Greece in general, just like throughout all times, is a hot place. So the more you can kind of keep the sun out of your home, the better. Because, well, the higher class buildings usually have like a courtyard and such in the middle of the building, like you could see that with the Palace of the River Rapids. It has a courtyard, and that would be beneficial for like air regulation or like heat regulation throughout the building. Lower class buildings didn't usually have a courtyard, or at least not one courtyard per like home. So keeping the heat out by having smaller windows is preferred over just having a heat stroke every time you wake up. So now we're going into the ride skin. I'm going to finish this off in the next video, but I already wanted to start on it in this video, because I originally thought like, alright, let's make this into some kind of temple, but I mean, we already have a temple later on, so I just thought like, alright, what can I do with this and not make it look weird? And so, well, we already start with like having the palace have some kind of like festival or party going on there, or had been going on there. So I thought like, alright, I might want to actually tap into that, and because it's like very close to like the Delphi of Theonopolis, because that's the best way to describe that place, I thought, alright, it might be like some festival in relation to some kind of deity, because there were a ton of deities back then. Like, well, there are like the big, I think 13, but like, let's say Zeus, Poseidon, and Aphrodite. I mean, I think those are the most well-known Greek gods, and then you had like a million local gods, which I'm not even going to try and look them up, because then I would go insane. But as I said before, we are going to finish this ride skin off in the next video. So I'm just going to finish off all the drapery and a little bit plants or like flower petals that have been strewn around because of the festival. And even back then, people didn't really clean up after themselves. But then, back then, most of the things they threw around were organic, so that usually went away a little bit faster than all the plastic we throw around nowadays. This is going slightly, well, political or just statement-y like, so I'm just going to keep it at that. And that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was a little bit less dumpster fiery than the last pre-built video, and maybe a little bit more useful. And I still have fun with rambling. I mean, I think we went off topic 5 times at least, so yeah, these videos will always be fun to make. But anyway, as I said before, that's going to be it. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you do, I hope to see you back in the next one. Don't forget to hit the like button, and I hope all of you Have an amazing weekend. Bye bye.